Welcome to Your Grey Matters, the podcast that unveils the miracles already amongst us. Here, we believe that the human mind cannot be defeated. Tune in to discover the fascinating people with extraordinary stories, innovative products, and groundbreaking services. With your host, Neil Silvert, who's earned his gray hair and still has use of his gray matter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil from the Your Grey Matters podcast. Welcome back. We're glad to see you. And if you tuned in on Remembrance Day, you saw that we did a tribute to Remembrance Day. We were very proud to do it. And I actually had a really wonderful experience. I had the pleasure, thanks to MP Dan Muse, and if you watch the show, you know Dan. And I was really lucky because I was able to participate in a Remembrance Day event. And it's always a great honor, and I hope that you were at one too. Well, one of the best things that happened when I was there, and there were many, was meeting this gentleman, our guest today, Bob Thomas. Bob is an amazing man, and I thought that you would want to meet him. As you know, on this podcast, we try to bring you the best and the most interesting people. So we're honored to have him on today, and Bob has devoted his entire life to service, military service, community service, and service to Canada's veterans. So like I said, I met Bob on Remembrance Day at the Watered Down Legion in Ontario, and it featured a beautiful and moving Remembrance Day ceremony. The best part for me was there were a lot of kids there, a lot of children, a lot of young adults, and people participate in the ceremony. It was really terrific. And I asked Bob to come on today because next year, 2026, is the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Legion. And I thought nobody better than Bob to reflect on what the Legion is, to explain it to us, and for you to know better why there's one probably in practically every city, I think, and they're important. Bob Thomas, welcome to the Your Grey Matters podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure. And folks, I got to tell you about Bob because this guy was a character. At the age of 15, he was already in the militia. Then he went on to serve in the Canadian Army. He was on peacekeeping missions in Cyprus, Egypt, Gaza, and Lebanon. And after his military years, he became a police officer. Then he led major security and safety programs in the private sector. He was always dedicating himself to people's safety. Bob has been recognized nationally with honors such as the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteers. And recently, Dan Muse, MP, awarded Bob the King Charles III Coronation Medal, a beautiful medal, and well-deserved by Bob. And today, he's an advocate for veterans, for supporting military families, and he helps to educate young Canadians. And Bob, you won't know this, but we're both former employees of the wonderful Sears Company. I was there too as a younger guy, and
Yes.
I loved it. I miss it. Bob, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your service to Canada. We are really grateful to have you on today.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Bob. We're going to come to that shirt that you're wearing before the end of the show. It's Red Day, folks. Today is Friday. We're going to talk about Red Day. But Bob, let's talk about you. So I think you grew up in Montreal. And did you really join the militia when you were 15 years old? Why did you do that?
Yes, I did. So when I was growing up, I attended a cadet unit in our high school, Westhill High School. The cadet unit was affiliated with the Victoria Rifles of Canada. Our teachers, many of our teachers were World War II veterans, and boy, did we ever look up to those folks. And I can remember we used to wear a uniform to school one day a week and prayed after school. And then on Saturday mornings, I would hop on the streetcar and go down to the Victoria Rifles Armory on Cathcart Street. And they had an indoor range and we would shoot. But probably the most dangerous job was they also had a bowling alley and you had to take turns being the pin boy. And those pins would come flying at you. So at any rate, I left home actually when I was 14 and left school. And I went to work for the Canadian National Railways. And one of the chaps in the next office one day approached me and said, well, you were in cadets. Do you want to join the Reserve Army? And I said, well, I'm not old enough. He said, well, don't worry about that. Come and check us out. And it was a transport column in Montreal. Their workhorse was a 3-ton international stake truck. And they also had motorcycles. And that really got me interested because I had my own motorcycle when I was 15. So at any rate, I went and I said, yeah, I'd like to join up. And he said, well, just change your date of birth and I'll check off I saw your birth certificate. And when I got my military records, I saw that I declared that I was born the 8th of September, 1941. And I was actually born the 18th of December, 1942. And I had a friend of mine, we did a lot of motorcycle trips together. And every year on the 8th of September, I would get a card like this year. Congratulations on your 84th birthday. And then the 8th of December, I would get one, congratulations on your 83rd birthday.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So you literally are living two lives.
Yes.
So Bob, it's interesting because it's funny how we hear these stories of people getting in younger, doing their duty. I don't think that technology allows that nowadays, but there was something that people could do in the past that maybe we can't do now, I think.
That's right. And actually what I joined the regular army when I was 17, and there was no messing around. You had to produce your certificate of baptism that was equivalent to your birth certificate in the province of Quebec. But it's interesting, I'm researching World War I men and women that served in the Flamborough area, and it wasn't uncommon in World War I to have a look at their attestation paper, and it would say that they were born in 1896 or 1897,
Wow.
and then you would get their birth certificate, and they were actually born in 1899 or 1900. So a lot of that went on in the early days.
Well, for those of us in our 70s, we don't remember World War One, but we remember
No,
about learning about it. We were much closer to it, and now it's well over 100 years old. I mean, it's hard to imagine, and yet still
yes.
plays a role, I believe, in our world. The lessons, good and bad, learned in that war. But Bob, I understand that you ended up on peacekeeping missions, and it seems to me that Canada seems to be known for our peacekeeping abilities. Is that still true today? And maybe you could talk about your experiences as a peacekeeper.
Well, when I served during the 50s and the 60s, it was in the Cold War period. And a lot of people at the time thought that our main role was peacekeeping, but it never was. Peacekeeping was a side issue. Our main role was to train to be prepared to go to war against the then Soviet Union. And I spent many days in the field and training with the brigade. But we do bring a quality to peacekeeping. First of all, we're kind of good people. We really are Canadians, and we don't have any ambitions of taking over somebody's mind or their territory. We're pretty honest brokers when we go on a peacekeeping mission, and we're very well respected. And part of that was because we were professionals, and many of the countries that supplied troops for peacekeeping, they were part-time soldiers or doing national service. So we had a very good reputation, and both operations I served on, it was quite evident.
Wow, and it really must have been a special time for you. And our country is highly regarded for so many reasons, but certainly doing what you were doing certainly is a part of it. It says here that you actually served in Cyprus, Egypt, Gaza, Lebanon. It's funny, some of those countries keep coming up still today, having challenges. And I think that peacekeeping is still needed in many places of this world, is it not?
Oh, for sure. And it was interesting. Now, when we deploy troops, there's a fairly long engagement process of getting them ready to go on deployment. I found out I was going to Cyprus on a Sunday evening, and I asked, when am I leaving? And they said, the bus leaves for Trenton on Tuesday morning. So we had one day, there was 120 of us on the draft, one day to turn in kit and get new kit. And we did head to Trenton very early on a Tuesday morning, stayed in Trenton overnight, and then we were on a Yukon aircraft on our way to Marville, France the next day. Before we landed, the captain announced, he said, "You'll have to remove all of your United Nations insignia because Charles de Gaulle doesn't want UN troops on French soil." And we were landing in Marville, France. So and we actually pulled out of France. Oh, it was a few years later. We because of some of that shenanigans, and that operation was moved to Germany. That was it. The next day, then we were on our way. We landed in Nicosia. The shortest briefing I ever received about what to expect. A young officer before we left Camp Petawala said to us, "I really don't know what's going to happen when you hit the ground. You're going to hit the ground running when you arrive in Nicosia. And when you get off the plane, you're going to see a bunch of foreigners. But remember, they're not the foreigners. You are. It's their country, so act accordingly."
Yes, exactly. You know, Bob, I've wondered for quite a while, and I'd like to ask this of you because one of the questions I'm going to get to is how those early years in your life shaped you for future years in your life. But you were talking about training in high school and training as a younger man. I grew up in Kitchener, Ontario, and we happened to have a former colonel in the Canadian Army as our phys ed teacher. And we were marching many times a week. He had us in uniform. And then we were shooting. We had a gun range in our high school. We were being taught fight and flight fighting, if you will. I think it was one of the best trainings that we went through. We hated them at the time because if you weren't there at six o'clock in the morning, whether the weather was good or bad, you were doing push-ups. But to this day, I think it helped form a better Neil Silver years later.
Yes.
And I wonder about military training for all kids.
I totally agree. The training I received, without a doubt, formed the foundation for me in later life to have many successes. It taught us teamwork. It taught us about working together. It taught us about being more tolerant of people. There were so many lessons that we learned that really stood us in good stead. And I agree with you. I think, we're really ramping up the investment in our military. And maybe it's time to have a look at some kind of a national service. And someone's a conscientious objector. There can be other things, working in forestry or something else that gives our young people a foundation, something that will set them up for life, if you like. And that's what this kind of training does.
And I agree with you. You know, it used to be in the old days, I think if you couldn't find where to do or you couldn't find yourself, going into the military was a very good idea. And I wanted to ask you, Bob, do you think that going into the actual military for young people, not just training in high school, but entering into our military services is a good thing still for people to do?
Oh, I think so. You look at some countries. We're a big country with a fairly small population in terms of the territory that we live on. We can't afford all of the sophisticated hardware, military hardware. But if we have a population that's had military training, no one will ever want to occupy us because we could make life hell for them if they decided to come in and try us on. And you look at countries like Finland, where they have a national service, Switzerland, national service. Look at Israel. Everybody receives military training and they can literally mobilize that country in a hurry. And so I really think it's win-win. First of all, it sets a young person up with some really good training and good qualities that will last them for the rest of their life. And it makes us much stronger as a nation.
And I agree. And I think that we would have, by militarily trained people, we could end up with better understanding in business, better relationships, even between the people of Canada and their government and what the government's supposed to be doing for people. I agree with you. I think that we'd just be better. I have to tell you one quick story. I forgot about it for years, but a number of years ago, 40 years ago, I was in Israel, Bob. And there was
Hmm.
a baseball game going on in Tel Aviv, and it was Canadian peacekeepers playing baseball against, I forget which country. But why I remember it is the captain of the team, the coach of the team was the late, great John Beliveau, hockey
Oh
star.
boy.
So
Yes.
I don't know
Wow.
what he was doing there. I don't know why the hockey man was coaching baseball, but I got to spend two
Yes.
great hours with John Beliveau. It
Wow.
was kind of fun, actually. Let me ask you, so you had your military career, and just before we move on past that, what sticks out in your mind about your career, Bob? Was there something that you're glad that you did specifically in your younger years that shaped your future? Perhaps just reflect a little bit on Bob's life in the military.
Well, I started out. I went for basic training and Group One service police training at the old Canadian Provo Corps School, and I reported in December 1960. Graduated in June 1961, and I went in a 17-year-old boy, and I came out an 18-year-old man. The
Mhm.
training was very intensive. Those days, we took our military, our soldier training at the same school as our service police training. From there, I went
Mhm.
to the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade Group with 2 Provo platoon. The brigades in those days numbered over 7,000 troops. We had 3 infantry
Wow.
battalions, an
Wow.
armored regiment, an artillery regiment, and the Provo platoon, we numbered, I think it was 45, 46. We had 3 sections and then a headquarters section. And our job was to policing for the brigade. And we had our own cook, we had our own ordnance clerk, we had our own REME, Royal Canadian Electrical Mechanical Engineer clerk, or mechanic. So we spent a lot of time in the field, as I mentioned before, training the brigade to keep it sharp. The brigade moved a lot because of the threat of tactical nuclear weapons. We never stayed in one spot very long. Spent Sleep was a sort of a premium when we're out on concentration and training in the field. In the wintertime, we would go out 5-man tent groups and train for winter survival. So
Mhm.
the training was intense, but it was good, and like I said, it really gave you a good foundation. What I found with the military, they trained you well, but you know how many? I was 23 years old when my CO called me in one day when I was in Camp Rafi, Egypt, and he said, "Bob, I'm sending you up to Beirut to run the military police detachment in Beirut." We had a leave
Wow.
center in Beirut for the United Nations Emergency Force troops and also the troops in Cyprus. I had Yugoslav, Indian, Danish, Indian MPs working for me. I had no communication with the headquarters. If I had to get a report back to Gaza, I would put it in a diplomatic pouch and fire it on the aircraft that was going back to Gaza, the UN aircraft. So, I mean, where in the world would you get a chance like that as a 23-year-old? They
Yeah.
trained you well, and they were prepared to let you go, get on and do the job.
Amazing, Bob. And again, I wonder if it's not a training that wouldn't be valuable for absolutely everybody. I want to ask you, Bob, just because I think maybe society is much more understanding of challenges that former military people come when they leave the military and they try to adapt to a non-military lifestyle. I wanted to ask you, could you talk a bit about the transition and what you've seen, and do we have enough support for people leaving the military now? Just your thoughts on it, please.
Yes, definitely. They're doing a much better job now. I go up to Camp Borden on a fairly regular basis, and I've actually gone to sessions where troops are getting ready to transition to civilian life, and they'll have a fair, a work fair, university representatives, representatives from Legion, representatives from many groups and businesses and police departments, and so I think they're doing a much better job with the transition now. They recognize that, someone that served 30 years in the military, it's going to be a whole different life. And when we look at the folks serving in the Canadian military, it's more than just them. It's really their family. It's a family affair. Whatever sacrifices the military member makes, their family also suffer a lot of different hardships while they're deployed. When I was deployed in Egypt, I was single. I was there for a year. And the married members, their wife was back home trying to keep the household together and look after the
Right.
children and look after all the other things that go to keep a household together. There's a lot of sacrifices made by not only the military members but also the family members. So I think today they're doing a much better job with the transition. In my case, I got out earlier and went right on to a police department, and so there wasn't really that much change. I went from policing in the military to policing on Civvy Street.
I think, unfortunately, lately the job of a non-military, military policeman for sure, but a non-military policeman working in our cities and with the public is a tough job today. And
It
I
is for sure.
and we have to keep an eye on them. And when I was preparing for that Remembrance Day address for Remembrance Day, I had a very wonderful friend listen to it, and he reminded me, and you've said it too, the importance of us being mindful of military families, that family that really is trying to keep it together while somebody's in the Army, the Navy, our wonderful services. And I think often we forget about the families, and we shouldn't be. We should be including them in everything when we're doing our thoughts and prayers and funding and medical help. I'm sure that you would agree.
Definitely. You mentioned before about Red Friday. Red
Yeah.
Friday started in Camp Petawawa with two military wives. Their husbands were deployed to Afghanistan in the early days of the Afghanistan war. And when we got out of Afghanistan, it kind of faded. And it was to wear red on Fridays to remember everyone deployed, and particularly at that time, the military. At any rate, it sort of faded for a couple of years. And then actually the two ladies that initially started it, they resurrected it, and they also chose to include first responders. So on Red
Wow.
Fridays, we not only recognize our military that are deployed, but also the efforts of our first responders. And when we think about it, we ask members of our military and our first responders and medical personnel to get into situations and see things that probably none of us should ever have to endure. And
Yes.
sometimes they struggle after it. They have difficulty with it. So we have to recognize that and just remember the great work those folks do. So we started Red Fridays. This coming year will be our sixth one. And essentially,
Hmm.
what we do, we invite the military and our first responders to set up displays on our parking lot, and we also include some history groups, our Waterdown Museum of Hope, our cadets, Army cadets, Air Force cadets, and basically go out to the public and say, come on, it's a free event. Come on in and meet and thank the people that look after you 24/7. And every year it's been growing more and more, and we're really pleased because it's just a super opportunity to have have the folks be able to interact and just see the great work that these folks do for us.
And it's interesting, Bob, because a couple of years ago I was engaged in a business deal with someone. I'd never heard the term before. His name is Gord. He's probably be listening. He's not military background, but he makes sure that every Friday on his Facebook page it's Red Day. He taught me about it. So there you have someone with no military background who I know for at least a couple of years has been promoting Red Day. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And folks, that you're now aware of Red Day, wear some red on Fridays, be aware of what it is. And that'll lead us beautifully into perhaps visiting your local Legion. And Bob, let's talk about the Royal Canadian Legion. We're approaching the 100th anniversary in 2026, I believe. And
Yes.
I I had a question for years. So what's the role that the Legion plays? Because both times that I've been to yours, I've been so welcomed, and I'm not military, but I've been so welcomed. So please talk to us about anything you want with the Legion. Give us an education.
Okay. I we could keep this podcast going for days here. The Royal
That's okay.
Canadian
Well,
Legion
we only
does.
allow 2 days.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I know. Yeah, the Royal Canadian Legion does fantastic work, and basically what the Legion does, or the role of the Legion, is to promote remembrance, support veterans, and also to support youth. And, and a key role is looking after our veterans. And we do that in a number of ways. For example, each Legion branch has a service officer. They're volunteers, but we also have paid provincial service officers. And our role is to help any veterans that are making claims through Veterans Affairs Canada. We help every veteran, whether they're a member of the Legion or not, or a veteran's family. And so we'll help them navigate the paperwork and work with them to process their claim and to make sure that they get a fair hearing. And there's a group of lawyers actually paid by the government of Canada, but their job is to fight the government of Canada. So if there are appeals to be handled free of charge, these lawyers represent the veteran, and we'll fight for them to get a claim through Veterans Affairs Canada. We do so many things. Well, at the Legion, we support youth in a number of ways. We sponsor 2 cadet units. We help them out financially. And they also, it's win-win because they help us during our annual Poppy campaign. And we just completed our Poppy campaign last week. And it's amazing how generous and how supportive the public are. They're not only wearing poppies, but to put some money that will help us to help veterans. We also, at our Legion, we have a partnership with the Waterdown Museum of Hope, which was started at Waterdown District High School. And twice a year, the students take over part of our Legion and they turn it into a museum. And it's absolutely amazing the work that they do, how engaged and enthusiastic they are. They present often something covering their family history or something else that they have of interest, and they research it and promote it. And it's amazing because it was started by Rob Flossman, a teacher, local teacher, and he just believed, you know what? Students don't learn from reading textbooks. You learn from getting your hands right in it and getting a full understanding of what you're presenting. So yeah, we have lots of stuff, and there's always lots more stuff going on at the Legion. For example, we're part of the community. We're a community hub. Saturday mornings, if you come out in the warmer months, you'll be able to attend a farmer's market. We let them use our front parking lot on a Saturday morning, and so the community can come and get some fresh produce and see what our local farmers are doing. We have next week Rotary pancake breakfast, so we let them use our facility, and it's win-win because when we wanted to put our banners up, the Rotary Club came forward with some money for us to put the poles up to hold the banners. So, and the BIA that run the farmers market, anything we want that they have that we can use and help each other out, it's just there. So a lot of the stuff that we do, it comes back to us in other ways. So we're so pleased that we can support our community. And that goes on in communities all across Canada where the Legion's involved and helping the community.
So, Bob, if somebody wants to just come in and say thank you to a vet or say thank you to a soldier, and folks, that was one of our calls to action, by the way, in the Remembrance Day address earlier this week. Please thank a vet if you see them. Please say hello. Don't ignore people, put their lives on the line for you. Don't be afraid to say hello to a police officer if you see them. These are people whose lives are spent trying to keep yours safe. So, but Bob, I wanted to know if a person wants to come, not just to your Legion, but generally, maybe somebody wants to come in, see the Legion, meet some of the people that kept us alive, maybe buy them a beer. Are people welcome even if they're not members? Just wondering how it works.
Oh, yes, they are. Most welcome. You don't have to be a member to come into the Legion. In fact, we welcome you to come in. We have all kinds of events. We have dances, we have karaoke, we have line dancing, we have pool, we have darts, and we have many people come into our branch, and they're not members, but they're always made to feel welcome. I just you mentioned John Beliveau and the Middle East. I just share a short story with you. When I was serving with the United Nations Emergency Force in 65, 66, the Canadians were playing Detroit for the Stanley Cup. And we used to get the newspaper. We knew the score before we got the film that we were able to play on our patio outside our mess. So at any rate, I was the only one cheering for Montreal. And Gordy Tapp, I don't know if you remember Gordy Tapp
sure, I
from
know them.
And Gordy actually was from near here. His home was in Burlington, just outside of Burlington. He was just a great guy. And he used to bring over a troupe every year of entertainers. He would bring Miss Canada with him. And this, in 1966, Jean Beliveau was part of the troupe. So when Jean came into the mess, the regimental sergeant major went over and said, "Jean, I want you to meet your only fan in the mess." What a fine gentleman.
World.
What a fine gentleman he was. He was an amazing man. You know, if he didn't have a kind word to say about somebody, he didn't say anything. He did so much for the game of hockey and for his charitable work. And he was just an amazing man.
Yes, he was. And I'm privileged that I have a picture somewhere of a very young Neil Silver with John Beliveau in a baseball uniform. It's got to be a collector's item. Just before we start to sign off, Bob, and everybody again, please go to the Legion, go meet the vets, go shake hands with the people who put their lives on the line for you today, and people who are, of course, in our military services now. Everybody, if we just say thanks and just acknowledge each other, it'd probably be a much better world. But Bob, we got to take on a tough issue now. This is a tough one. My bride Linda and I were having a hot discussion on this week, so we better get it out in the open. Bob, what's the protocol? When do I take my poppy off? When am I supposed to put it on? What is the proper protocol? Now that's a tough question.
Oh, it's not tough at all. No. So the poppy campaign always starts the last Friday of October. And we typically, we wear our poppy starting the last Friday of October. And then we wear it through to Remembrance Day. And then November the 12th, we normally put the poppy away. Now we wear it for other occasions too. We'll wear it when for a Legion service for a fallen comrade. We'll wear a poppy, and we actually have during the service a process where we go up generally in twos, and we take our poppy off and we put it beside the urn if they were cremated, or in the coffin if the fallen are being buried in a coffin. So that's other occasions that we wear a poppy. But yeah, and you know what? Over the years, you hear people, they get all sometimes tied up in their corporate underwear. But you know what? The most important part of it is that somebody wears a poppy. And, you know, if somebody wore it for a day or two longer or a day or two before it, you'll never hear an argument from me. I'm just tickled pink that they're wearing a poppy and they remember.
Here. Well, Bob, this has been a joy. We're so thankful to you. We're so thankful to your military colleagues, to the Legion, and frankly, whether you're 83 or 84, we really do thank you for your service. We're privileged. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in today. And with that, Bob Thomas, thanks again, everybody. We will see you soon on the Your Gray Matters. And Bob, I will see you soon, I hope, up at the Legion. Thanks a lot.
And thank you for putting the focus on our veterans. It's really appreciated.
Thanks for watching. If you found it interesting and you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you're ready to subscribe, click right here. And if you'd like to see another episode, click right here. Tell a friend. Send us comments. Thanks a lot.